Vadim was a good host, which, on occasion, meant being a good observer of people. Knowing their moods facilitated a superior dining experience, and even after his father became a celebrated chef and the toast of, well, it paid to use a personal touch, to make them feel catered to. Special. Every customer was special. Children, on the other hand, were a trial by hurricane. As soon as you watched a family blow in, you knew there would be trouble. Boys would cry, or girls would get out of their seats and run around. Someone would start yelling they wanted fish sticks. In short, he knew children, and watching Levi McClendon return, he saw the time-honored expression of every parent doing their very best to not say something in front of the children. Not that the three tykes seemed aware. Joshua and Lagos ran over to tell Melody about the park, while Cassandra attached herself to Riala. To his surprise and delight, Riala, Melody, and Hannah pitched in to explain the children's favourites, and everything was soon ready. The fried batter was easy, and the trio whooped with joy as they settled down to eat. Vadim readied another stack of pancakes as the first disappeared, held down by butter, a variety of diced earth fruit, and a smattering of powdered sugar. He also watched as Levi disappeared into the bedrooms, followed by Riala and Melody. Hannah took over minding the boisterous trio with an almost paternal hand. "It's not just Mr. Warwick. Everything is backwards for these people." That was the easy part. "Hey, those look pretty good. You catch on fast." Jakaran grinned as he pulled out a carafe of Ubeki juice from the refrigerator. Dressed in nothing but a threadbare t-shirt and blue jeans, it boggled the mind, which had only grown worse when three more of his Valhazko Liebhabrin appeared. It was mortifying. "Oh hey, pancakes!" Trixis and Yumina emerged from their bedroom, with Solana following along after. His two eldest cousins rolled their eyes at Jacerin, while Solana actually mussed her co-brother's hair before firmly ordering him to go put on a kaftan. Even though the four were close family, it was impossible not to blush. Vadim ladled another set of batter out onto the griddle as the next batch of papayas came out, swallowed his embarrassment, and tried to fit in. The customer was always right. This was family. These people all knew one another, and he was the outsider. "Damn! Do I smell meat muffins?" Vadim rose as the other human, Eli McClendon, ambled into the kitchen in jeans with cut-off legs, while above the waist, it was some sort of t-shirt, without even sleeves. "Ow! Hot!" Eli juggled the papaya in a napkin as it steamed merrily. "Thought I'd check out the heated pool. Anybody want to join me?" All of his instincts screaming to the contrary, Budin left Jennifer McClendon to finish up in his kitchen, and sauntered over to his cousin as gallantly as he was able. Given that he wanted to club her with the ham currently occupying his refrigerator, it went rather well. "Now don't mind me, dear. I just need a word and we'll be right back." Budin ignored Phrysis' bleary look of apprehension as he took her by the arm and headed for the parlor. "I just need a word on today's plans." Either because she was still tired, or retained some semblance of discretion, Phrysis allowed herself to be pulled along in Budin's wake. He tugged her inside the parlor and drew the sliding door shut, before rounding upon her. "No." "Budin, whatever you're playing at, I'm not in the mood," Phrysis growled. "I just got up and we have things to do today. I'm taking them to see the assembly and—" "I said no." Arms crossed, Budin planted himself in front of the door, but kept his voice to a whisper. "I don't care how starlight you are not going to carry out this debacle with our guests. I categorically forbid it." Phrysis drew herself up in a huff the way she always did, and Budin braced for the inevitable browbeating. It came as something of a surprise when she only glowered down at him, tugging at her jacket. "Look, oh, wonder of the kitchen, I'm tired. So why don't you tell me exactly what you're forbidding? Really? Still blocking the door, Bodine blinked in surprise. The expected gale had failed to materialize, but he braced himself as it would surely gather. You may be comfortable looking years out of date, but have you seen what they're wearing? Every day, for years now. Frances had dressed before leaving her chambers, and wore a tailored blazer and matching pants in a mauve so dark they were almost black. And what exactly is wrong with what I'm wearing? Women. You're wearing thin lapels, and that jacket is single-breasted. Bodine found himself losing patience and rolled his eyes. Fortunately, he'd always known his cousin's weakness, and he pressed the knife home. Or are you telling me you prefer looking like a hapless roue from the outer provinces to every noble in the assembly? I don't, No, you definitely don't. Bodine sniffed and laid a hand across the lapel dismissively. This will not do. Honestly, it's just like dressing you for your first civil service exam all over again. Hey, my father wore Paisley all the time. There was an art to glowering up at a woman, and Bodine had mastered it years ago. Paisley. And anyway, did I ever steal you wrong? Frances scowled, but now it was at least partly at her suit. I'd have scored the same on my exams no matter what I wore. Yes, and being placed in a dead-end job in the back of beyond, while someone who scored the same as you but dressed for success received the good assignment instead. When will you ever? Bodine stared at the suit properly now, his heart growing cold. Is this one of the suits Brellock and I purchased before you left for Earth? Oh dear goddess, it is. I don't have time for this. Frances gave a weary sigh, then rallied. Besides, my husband has a wonderful sense of fashion. Which is years out of date, and I'll catch him up once the poor dear gets over all you put him through, Bodine countered pertly. Brellock was a lovely man, and he adored him like a brother, but he simply wasn't made of sterner stuff. When the knives came out and the blood flew, when people were screaming and the pressure mounted to deliver, he'd seen the truth in Brellock's eyes. Brellock was a lovely man, but he would never survive in the food service industry. Today, Bodine said with conviction, we are going shopping. Shopping? Frances's sigh was 2 part aggravation and 1 part suffering. I have us booked into the assembly this afternoon for an evening tour. Do you know they charge an entrance fee for women of my rank now? I know you want to take Brellock out, but we don't have time for running around the shopping districts today. As if I would do that. We're going somewhere bespoke. Bespoke? Where are you going to find a bespoke tailor on no notice in the middle of the morning? Bespoke. And you leave that to me. Bodine nodded firmly. And you're paying. What? Bodine, I don't... You don't want to look like you're a woman on the way up? Don't want to look like some bumpkin dragging around barbarians from the sex planet? We don't call it that. Frances turned blue with indignation and tried awkwardly pushing past him. Not ever. No, we don't. Do you not see that I'm side by side with you in this? Who is it who gave up a celebrity job to open Sex Planet Food? Do you have any idea how many utterly crass jokes were slipped into the early reviews? Bodine huffed and glared up at her for all he was worth. Of course, he'd been immune to such things for ages, but it wasn't as if she had to know. You can either look like some yokel leading around a group of gawking savages, or you could be a rising star, displaying the Imperium's finest works to her newest citizens, to the admiration of everyone around her. Frances drew in a fortifying breath and glowered. Shopping? Shopping, he nodded, waving genteelly at the door as he stepped out of the way. Just as well, since he could hear Miara in the kitchen, and there were some disasters he couldn't face. Bodine took the win, following Frances back into the room, and slipped in to take over at the stove. True to her word, Jennifer had left everything spotless. He approved. There was something rather charming about the human woman, and the thought of Phryas' leaving her and her husband open to ridicule was simply intolerable. It would only take one stop and perhaps a few hours, time to get what they needed and a late lunch after the fact. What could possibly go wrong? Of course, it had to be one of the children. Gathering up the Dasari clan had proven to be relatively easy, but Badin hadn't quite remembered the children. It was one thing to serve a family a meal, but an excursion out? It had been years since he'd had to shepherd Vadim about, but the old memories came back. The tiny shop in Selentori earned him a few discreetly dubious looks from Brelak, but they managed to bustle the whole family inside. 19 people, of which 7 were humans, with all the outlandish proportions that entailed. It wasn't entirely fair to descend on Fedra Thario, but he and his wives were geniuses, and reasonably priced ones at that. Fedra was a master of the Faber, and Tom Warwick had at least provided the tailor with valuable experience in human measurements. The women at least seemed to be having the time of their lives, asking the Thario wives questions about the fabrics. But the children? Thank goodness the little ones were staying by their mothers, but... "And I'm telling you, something stuck me," Eli complained again, openly rubbing his backside. Measurements. That was all that was needed. The Fabers were already pouring out 3 sets of clothes that were more than adequate for walking around, and given 2 days, the Thario family could provide 1 set of proper clothing. Nothing from scratch, but at least hand-stitched enough to pass all but the most strenuous inspection by devotees and fashionistas. "Just give it a rest, huh?" Jasarin seemed to be something of a good influence, but even his behavior left something to be desired. "I think it just itches." At the register with Fedder, Bodine switched to High Vatica as he added more credits to the gratuity. 350, said Fedder. "You do want these tomorrow." 400, whispered Bodine. An artiste of quality was always worth paying for, and if he scratches his ass again, stick him harder. Princess Komodri Tessu looked about her gardens from the confines of the lower terrace, and sighed. Such an intolerable waste! As the fall season transitioned into winter, the garden underwent a dramatic transformation, with a once vibrant and flourishing landscape giving way to a sense of desolation. The correlace plants had turned a dull grey, and the signs of wilting and decay were unmistakable, casting a melancholic aura over what was once a lively and colourful place. Faded colours and bare trees, once resplendent with lush foliage, had surrendered to the cold of winter. Only sunlight of noon had chased away the last traceries of frost. An entire social season gone. Joyous fall galas that would have transpired here under her personal touch, lost to the silence of winter as if they had never could have been. This garden, her realm of beauty and serenity, had transformed into a metaphor for melancholy by the changing seasons. Still, one needed not trouble oneself with one minor detail when the transition from fall to winter had brought with it a sense of stillness and decay, as nature prepared to rest and renew itself for the coming spring. Bearing the weight of her royal lineage and the complexities of diplomatic niceties being demanded of one must make a resolute and intricately layered proclamation to the court, eloquently addressing the delicate web of political alliances, socio-economic challenges, and the timeless traditions of the Imperium, while emphasizing one's unwavering commitment to fostering unity, prosperity, and cultural preservation in this holiday season. Of course, the first task being tossed at her by the palace was the opening speech of Evrovi, a tiresome affair all the way out at Selentori Colosseum, a dreadful spectacle where she would have to take to the stage and address the city. One couldn't even pre-record the thing. Public speaking was such a chore, bereft of the personal touch that a gala had to offer. Komodri scowled at the wilted gardens, and even more at the speech on her omnipad. It was so pedestrian. Mere pablum for the masses. And even after she was done, the palace was demanding that she sit there and watch the parade of worlds. Of course, it was her honour to accept the position in her mother's absence. It was just so boring. She huffed, glaring at the on-the-pad again. Even worse was having to deliver the speech without prompting. One had to deliver it with polish, an impromptu performance to seem genuine. A flicker of movement out on the green caught her eye, and Camordry gnashed her teeth. "Sunfree, one wants one's attendance at once." Camordry watched her secretary hurry over, unable to find solace even in the man's beautiful figure. At her order, the dining room was still being fumigated after that dinner, which was certainly bad enough. Even if her home had hosted virtually the only social event of the season, it had been violated, and now her garden was infested by vermin. Pouchadillos! In our garden! Thankfully, her secretary still retained his presence of mind. "How, your Royal Highness? A pouchadillo?" "How? Indeed, did I not say so?" Camordry felt her temples starting to pound. "You said the very thing, your Royal Highness, but—" "No, one clearly said pouchadillos in the plural. No doubt a veritable mob burrowing in the gardens. One was terribly clear." "And it is right of you to say so, your Royal Highness. Enough excuses. Those vermin were supposed to be eradicated by the grounds crew when one left. Must one do everything oneself?" Camordry rounded on her secretary. Pretty as he was, there were limits to one's patience. "Fetch one? The exterminator." Honestly, could one possibly have a more trying homecoming? As her mother's only child, Letzi Trelangi was used to the foibles of adults, but coming home was not the same as never having left. Her time away at the academy, really, truly away for the first time in her life, had made the difference. Even if you came back to where you started, you saw it with new eyes, saw familiar people in a new way. Letzi had been home only a couple of days now, but for the first time in her life, she appreciated just how bad her family was. Not evil or wicked, just dysfunctional. Her father wasn't a strong man, giving in to her co-mother's whims on everything. Not that he was suffering. Every single winter, her co-mothers routinely swept him away on a vacation to the southern Alanu Islands. They claimed it was time for adults, but as the years went on, they'd taken her co-sisters and even some of their friends for some time in the sun, out on the beaches or boating. Letzi had never been invited. Not once. As a young girl, there had been tears and resentment, though as she'd grown older, the respite from her home life had come to seem like a vacation all its own. It was hard not to be jealous, but it still felt like a relief. It was a family run on discipline and control, and you didn't complain. That never led to anything good. You learned to follow orders, to suck it up. You learned to stay quiet. Sitting down for lunch where her co-sisters ignored her, she realized the singular truth, that running into Desala Sehart had been the best thing that could have possibly happened to her. Desala could be direct, bossy even, but underneath it all she actually did care. Moreover, despite all her focus on getting things done, she had taken the time to help show Letzi around, even being real help when it was needed. She could sometimes be insufferable, but that had passed, and from their conversations now and then, she learned Desala's home life had its own issues. Still, breaking free from Desala had been exactly what I needed. Her life had taken a turn into oblivion in so many ways. Her co-mothers controlled everything, even where her father was allowed to go, and he was never let out without an escort. In his own way, he's more trapped than I am, but if he cared, it never showed. Desala cared. Her new friends cared. Sure, they had families with their ups and downs, but their parents cared. Even Melondi's life seemed warm, somehow. Even shut away in a palace, she'd had nothing but warm things to say about her older sister, and the woman that helped raise her. Love isn't proximity. Love is consistency. That was one lesson she'd learned that wasn't on any curriculum. As for the other, well, the opposite of love wasn't hatred, but she'd known that all her life.
It would have been so easy to hate myself, to think it was all my fault, that I'm just like my mother, whatever that even means.
She'd overheard that remark when she was younger. Some things took on a life of their own. Some things you never forgot.
But would I ever try and fix things with my father?
Ignoring the clink of cutlery and her co-sister's conversation, Lexi looked inside herself and knew that the answer was no.
I don't hate my father, in spite of everything, but the opposite of love is neglect.
Lexi folded her napkin and stared down at her plate, having suddenly lost her appetite.
But now I know the damage is worse than I ever admitted, and I don't want to talk to him, because I don't want to open these wounds ever again.
Getting up from the table, she mumbled an excuse and made her way to her bedroom.
Sometimes life closes a door on you forever. My mother's death was one of those, but this feels like a door I'm going to close by myself.
Her bags were barely unpacked and she looked around her room. It wasn't like she had much of anything to take. Nothing that mattered. Flopping down on her bed, she picked up her Omnipad and looked over the numbers she knew.
Desala's on vacation with her family. Half the girls left town, and I didn't make arrangements to stay on campus.
There was still one number, and she dialed it with trepidation.
Please pick up. Please pick. Hey, Lexi! Joyous Arovia and all that.
Kellock's voice was like a wave of relief. Someone talking with her. To her.
Didn't expect to hear from you until we got back to school. How's things?
Lexi swallowed, then took a breath.
I'm not okay, Lark. It's a long story, but I was wondering, please, can I stay with you? Damn, Lexi. I'm sorry.
Lark's voice came back, and Lexi felt her heart sink into her stomach. It had been a lot to ask, and...
my place is a mess. You're sure you won't mind? No, I swear. I won't mind at all.
Lexi shot up in bed.
Goddess, I'll clean. Anything, please. I need to get out of here. You will not touch the mess. It's my mess, and I know where to find things. Well, you'll see,
Lark chuckled.
When can you get here?
15 minutes later, Lexi Trelongi walked down her drive and tossed her bag in the waiting autocab. If anyone had seen her leave, they hadn't come out. Sooner or later, they'd find the note she had left. It hadn't taken long to write, and besides,
I have places to be. Maybe my mother was all of the terrible things they hinted at, but one thing my mother had done was leave money entrusted to me. It's not much, but it's enough.
The academy was free, and she'd earned her place. She had enough to cover the boarding fees, and her credits could last. If needs be, she could work during the summers. Punching in the address to Lark's apartment, she looked back at the house and tossed her Omnipad out the door.
There's nothing I need here, anymore.
The only number she needed was stored on the datanet. She certainly had more than enough to purchase a new Omnipad with a new number.
And no one I want to talk to.
As the autocab rolled away into the early afternoon, Lexi smiled. For the first time in days, her appetite was back. Human food was a fascinating combination of familiar and alien. The name alone put Hannah in mind of a classic joke from the dark and distant era of black and white television. She managed to get a snicker from Levi when she suggested looking for a copy of To Serve Man in the kitchen. The fishing net that decorated the ceiling put her in mind of a seafood place, though the colours throughout the rest of the decor were more suited to some kind of 50s-themed diner, with cloth napkins that looked like they'd be at home in a Ruth's Chris. And the silverware was purple. Thermocast utensils aside, it somehow managed to be quaint and homely, despite all the chrome. Melondi, the girl who'd come to the spaceport with Burdine and Vadim, was collecting dishes from one of the tables as the lot of them situated themselves. Hannah gave her a wave and a smile when she caught her eye, and was gratified to see one in return. The menu was familiar for the most part. She hadn't been sure exactly what she was expecting, but a standard variety of entrees were listed on offer, with the only real eyebrow raiser being a side dish of something called bagoon puffs. Vadim was the soul of professionalism, as he took everyone's order. He slipped easily from charming to helpful and back again, as each member of the family needed. He let a bit of surprise slip for only a moment, as Joshua, oozing all the confident charm of a 4-year-old, and coached along by Melody, proudly requested an order of fish sticks. After food was ordered, Hannah tuned out the exultant description of the day's planned events that Francis was espousing from the head of the table, and let her attention wander. The restaurant was sparsely populated for the lunch hour, but there were still enough species represented to be intriguing. She knew of the Rakiri, of course, and she'd heard of the Helcom, but never actually seen one in person. As a cold-blooded species, she suspected that it only took one look at the average winter weather back home for most settlers of the reptilian persuasion to seek more tropical climes. Indeed, the trio of scaled girls that occupied the booth in the far corner were still bundled up to their chins, and if the soft red glow of indicator lights on the cuffs and collars of their jackets was anything to go by, they had brought the proverbial big guns in their fight against the autumn chill.
Party, and 2 days from now I've arranged for us all to tour the Imperial Palace.
Francis was beaming magnanimously.
Vadim, your friend is invited too.
Hannah watched as 2 tables away, Melondi froze.
That's very kind of you, Aunt Francis.
Vadim's smile looked just a touch brittle.
But I don't know if... Oh, come now, Vadim, don't be shy.
Francis dismissed the objection with a flourish.
She was such an help to us at the spaceport. The least we can do is include her.
Melondi spun to face the table, a look of polite regret on her face.
I couldn't possibly intrude on... Nonsense!
Francis's smile was expansive and beneficent.
It's Evrovi. Surely you wouldn't begrudge me the chance to spread a bit of good cheer?
Melondi and Vadim exchanged inscrutable glances, before she turned back to Francis with a nod.
That's very kind of you, Lady Dasari. You are more than welcome, young lady. We're happy to have you along.
Hannah watched as she retrieved the dish bin and fled to the dining area, with Vadim following close behind.
Hey, she whispered over to Levi. Did that feel weird to you?
Weirder than usual?
Yeah.
A bit. Hannah excused herself and hurried in the direction of the kitchen, searching for the 2 Shulvanti. She was nearing the corner that split towards the restrooms when she heard their voices.
Insufferable, boneheaded, coral-brained...
She's just trying to be nice, Vadim. She's bad at it, but she's trying.
But you can't go there with us. I mean, you may as well just...
Hannah cleared her throat as she stepped around the corner.
Sorry, I didn't want to listen where I shouldn't. Are you both okay?
Vadim's mouth worked soundlessly for a moment, and Melondi's eyes were wide. Melondi was the first to recover.
No, I mean, yes. Nothing is wrong. We're fine. Both of us. Perfectly fine. Yes, thank you for asking. How are you?
Hannah frowned with concern.
You really don't have to come with us if you don't want to, Melondi. We understand that Aunt Francis can be a bit much sometimes. No. It's not that I don't want to go with you or your family, Melondi squirmed, glancing at Vadim again. It's just complicated. Yes, Vadim rallied to her defense. It's not you, it's her. Us. It's us. We're... His eyes widened as he struggled for words. Complicated. Okay. Hannah looked back and forth between the two of them uncertainly. Well, just so long as we're not making anything worse, alright? She excused herself to the restroom while they were still spluttering. That whole thing merited consideration. Hannah didn't know many Shulvanti men, and few of those that she did know were not what most of the galaxy would think of as normal Shulvanti men. It seemed to her that any Shulvanti man willing to come to a woman's aid like that
care for the woman in question, and probably a great deal. Which, she mused as she washed her hands, meant there was a very good chance that... The door to the restroom opened, and the three Helcom girls shuffled in. They all froze at the sight of Hannah washing her hands. She raised an eyebrow. "Can I help you?" The one on the right elbowed the one in the centre.
We were wondering, are you a real human?"
Hannah suppressed a smile as she nodded. "Yes, I am."
"Yes!"
The one on the left gave the one on the right a triumphant shove.
"Told you."
The middle one gave a sibilant hiss, her tongue flickering at her lips.
"That's amazing. I'm Tshirt, this is Spataz, and this is Tshirt. It's so cool to meet you."
The girls stepped forward, offering fist bumps and greeting.
"She means chill," Tshirt said with a shrug. "She's a real fangirl."
Cool or chill works, and I'm delighted to meet you as well." She bumped each fist in turn, nodding to the girls. The one on the left, Spataz, rubbed her knuckles with an awed expression.
"Are humans always so warm? Even your men?"
Tshirt added.
"Usually," she nodded, "but it can vary when we're sick." "Wow!"
Spataz marvelled.
"I'd love to get to sleep with one of you. So warm."
Hannah blinked. "What?"
"And is it true about your men?"
The lizard girl barreled onwards.
"You're so lucky. I've never had a man even look at me twice, but you have a whole species who want you? All the time, too."
Well,
yeah."
Tshirt was getting caught up in the excitement of the moment.
"And they'd be so warm you'd never go into torpor. Talk about a good morning."
Hannah frowned.
torpor?
"You know,"
Tshirt chided.
"when your body gets cold and starts shutting down after the guy steals the blankets." "Like you've ever had a guy to know."
Tshirt smacked her on the arm.
"And of course she wouldn't. She's warm all the time." "Oh, right."
Tshirt looked downcast, but quickly rallied and turned back to Hannah.
"So you know the other humans, right? Can you introduce us?"
You want me to introduce you to my brothers?
"Your brothers?"
The three girls froze again.
"And my father."
Hannah crossed her arms.
"Oh, thank the goddess. We thought one was your husband. Are they all free?"
What? No, I'm not married and, well...
She hesitated. What were the odds of Eli causing an interstellar incident? Or maybe having him carried off forever?
There is one.
The three girls gasped and leaned forward as one.
"Really?"
Hannah began edging toward the door.
"Listen, why don't I let him know that you're interested? You are interested, right?"
Three heads bobbed in vigorous nods.
"Right. I'll let him know and he can go say hi if he feels like it. Does that work?"
The nodding grew more vigorous.
"Good."
She slipped out the door, throwing them all a parting smile.
Lovely to meet you all.
Back at the table, she flopped down in her chair with a sigh of relief.
You good?
Eli asked with a raised eyebrow.
Fine.
His expression morphed into a suspicious frown as he looked back the way she'd come from. Is that cheering?
The air dryer just sounds weird.
Uh-huh. He shrugged, then glanced around and lowered his voice.
Hey, do you remember that calendar?
Calendar? Which calendar?
You know.
Eli jerked his head toward Melondi.
The one you said was exploitative and crass?
She gave him a flat look.
So you do remember. Good. Now, be cool about it, but I'm pretty sure that girl...
He inclined his head towards where Melondi was bossing a newly vacated table.
Is Miss April.
Vadim didn't scowl. He never scowled. Scowling was the sort of look that a room full of diners would notice and start them wondering what was wrong. No matter what happened, a good maître d'œuvre did not scowl. You went him back first. While he wanted to scowl, his father was looking happier by the minute. Lunch over the last few weeks had been rough, and the restaurant was hanging on by its dinner trade. But not today. Vadim huffed in exasperation. Mr. Warwick was inside cooking chicken, though at this point the other chefs had it down. It seemed odd that Warwick wouldn't be out with his fellow humans, but life had been difficult for the man, with Desi still recovering. Perhaps he just didn't feel up to being social. Right now, Vadim could understand that, but he braced himself as his father bustled over. "Vadim, have you seen how many people are coming in? It's fabulous! Just a glimpse of real humans eating here, and the foot traffic is coming back up right before our eyes." Vadim bit his lip thoughtfully. "Most of them look like our regulars coming back, father. I mean, there are some new..." "Of course they are! I told you! People always know an ethnic restaurant is good if the natives eat there." Vadim briefly wrapped his son in a warm hug, but was already off. Keep the McClendons happy and keep them eating. And that was the problem, wasn't it? Not the McClendons so much as the McClendon. Melondi had come in today and was bussing tables, and the one named Eli had spent all lunch ogling her without any discretion at all. Still, he had to keep them happy, and keep them eating. The trip into the storeroom took only a minute, and Vadim picked over an appetizer plate being set up, artfully moving things around to his taste. He was almost done when Poulter showed up at his side. "Hey, Vadim, is that my appetizer for table 6? "Not anymore." Vadim looked the platter over and tucked away the spent tube. "Now is for that human guy at table 9, that one in the blue jacket. Take it out to him and tell him it's a special gift to him from table 22, will you? I'll get the replacement tray ready for you." We don't have a table 22. And isn't that the stuff your father said never to serve?" "Haven't any idea." Vadim tossed the empty tube of colours into the waste bin. "This was the last of it anyway. Trust me, it's all good now." There were mornings life reminded Tommy Steinberg of what he once was and who he'd become. When life kicked him in the balls, it reminded him that despite having the domestic dream of a hot wife, a good house, and kids he loved to death, he was little more than a murderer who'd found a job. Usually when that happened, it occurred to him that his life had become a miracle of sound song. "You've got the world on your shoulders, innocence left you too soon. So young at heart, but you feel so much older, under your favourite full moon." It was a metaphor for something or other, but right now Tom did feel like he had the world on his shoulders. The thing with the HFY was not going well, and Tom was straight up on the verge of sending the lunatics to break bread, but more likely break their knees. When Tom opened his eyes, the last thing he expected, or wanted, was to see a set of copper eyes staring down at him. Eyes belonging to what appeared to be a grey cat girl in a black bikini. A cat girl with the body of an 18-year-old Christine Brinkley, who was currently straddling him. "What the fuck?" Tom tried to slide out from under the girl and reach for the gun on his nightstand. Unfortunately, this sent them both tumbling to the floor. Tom grunted as the girl landed on top of him. This woke up Avie, who gave a second, "What the fuck?" at the sight of Tom on the floor with his face in the cat babe's boobs. The girl got to her feet. "You are Thomas Steinberg, are you not?" "Yeah, Steinberg. Kinda thought you'd remember, considering..." "Huh. Well, maybe not." "Excellent. I am Pat Very. You are my hackhacked." She stood up, regarding him and clearing her throat. "Cheer-row-row. There. The formalities are now complete." "Oh, yes, of course. Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit." Tom looked back at Avie guiltily. He'd been under the impression that the cats would give him some time to think about a final answer. That was how Raikishi had worded it. Sort of. Anyway, sorry babe, I'll explain everything over breakfast. Which brought them to breakfast. Tom decided cooking today would be a good way to get out of the doghouse anyway. As he was working his way through one of the amazing Adixi recipes Avie has shown him, Shanky ran through yelling. Well, at least the "yeah" sound pretty frantic. Oh, yeah. There was Patviri chasing him. No! Tom dove and slid under Patviri's feet, baseball style. The Petrin went down, giving Tom a faceful of her booze for the second time in an hour. Shanky stood there, pointing a knife at them.
I'm still waiting for an explanation for this.
At this point, at least Avie looked amused rather than murderous, even if it was at his suffering. Yeah. Tom shoved Patviri off him and stood up. He did one of his breathing exercises and did not say, "God has decided to punish me for my sins." Instead, he went back to the stove, and as he cooked, he laid out the circumstances they now found themselves in. Long story short, after that operation at the palace, the Persian clan I dealt with has kind of decided I'll make a good father figure.
Oh, time and tide,
Avie facepalmed.
And you were going to tell me when exactly?
Yeah, well, I thought they were waiting for me to give the go-ahead, so I was thinking on it. Avie facepalmed again.
Tom, you idiot! They're Pezrin!
Look.
Tom, you idiot! They're Pezrin!
Look, it's not like I ever knew what it was like being a hack act. They don't go out of their way to tell you. Tom went back to cooking the fish stew. Yo, kids! Breakfast! Liam knew that Shur was a different planet from Earth, but after the initial impression of scale wore off, life in the capital had been just another city. Hope had kept him locked away in Sorgo Academy for weeks, but in the end, it hadn't mattered. The dangers she worried about were all the same ones he'd grown up with. Mostly. It was more a question of scale, but he played it safe. Always go places with lots of people, avoid being caught in confined spaces, and always take an autocab alone. It was a good plan, and he hadn't deviated from it. Well, until meeting Belder. Even after that, he stuck with the plan. The Shill and Rakiri girls back home weren't there on unaccompanied tours after weeks to months in the ship and not a guy in sight. You still got that, of course, but it wasn't just a given, and so his experience of another planet was just another city. Wilist, on the other hand. After stepping onto the gangway, two things immediately came to his attention. The first was that it was hot, not just warm. Hot. Hot like Shill in summer hot. This was Africa hot. Tarzan hot. But unlike Shill, it wasn't humid. It wasn't arid, but after months on Shill, the dry air of Wilist hit him like a body blow. The second thing he noticed was that the air wasn't all that fresh. Word got around on the small ship, and after the confrontation with the ship's engineer, the freighter's captain had stepped in. The day before, Belder had come whooping back to their cabin. By way of an apology, the ship had the option of making planetfall at one of the two great stockyards, rather than the main spaceport. And so it was that Belle had contacted her family. Itala Freight Yards was almost 3 hours closer to home, a bustling point of transit for the Imperium, supplying Shur's vast population with Turox meat. With stockyards, abattoirs, and packing plants, as far as the eye could see, Wilist was fragrant. Oh shit. Turox shit, to be exact. Pris murmured in his ear, while Belder elbowed her way into the crowd around the baggage carousel. Take a good look around. We aren't in the big city anymore. Even so, it buoyed his spirits. A real alien planet. Covered 63% by land, Wilist had been shore-formed ever so lightly, seeding the perpetual savanna with flora and fauna edible to the omnivorous Turox. With only 3 cities of note, the planetary population was drastically outnumbered by the endless roaming herds. He looked forward to seeing something utterly different from Canada, once they cleared the spaceport. Life had other plans, and he followed Belder when she let out a whoop of joy and took off at a run. Liam tried to take in exactly what he was seeing, but the mind boggled. There were 8 animals rounding the corner, ridden by 4 Shorvanti, and... were those Rakiri? You came! Belder ran straight for the unmounted beast, and Liam watched dumbfounded as it revealed rows of jagged teeth and roared as Belder ran straight for it. Stubby claws reached for her, and it looked certain that she was about to be gutted. As a dancer, Liam appreciated that Belle was athletic. Not always graceful on the dance floor, but a lot more than any other Shilvanti he'd met. He watched as Belle tucked and rolled under the gaping maw, coming up inside the creature's grasp to hug the beast bodily, ruffling the feathers around his neck. The beast roared again, its stubby claw arms fluttering as it folded them around Belder, its roar turning to a muted rumble. My girl is hugging a feathered pink and green velociraptor. Not just hugging. The enormous dino beast chirped almost musically as Belder plunged her hands into its feathers up to her elbows.
Who missed me? Oh, goddess, I missed you so much. Have you been a good girl while I was gone?
Pris, I know this has to be safe because those folks are writing them, but what the hell is that?
That's a Rigoi. There are some in Atherton, but I've never ridden one. Unless you bond to one, they're bad-tempered at both ends, and pure evil in the middle.
Pris nudged him with her bag ever so gently.
How did you think people heard Turox?